Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, is a movie that a lot of people hate. Well, people who was born before 9/11 hate. Over the years, a lot of kids who had grown up with the prequels have looked at this movie rather fondly, and I am one of those kids who had grown up with the Star Wars prequels. After the release of the dogshit sequel trilogy, The Phantom Menace has gotten a better reception. Is this movie good because I, myself, am nostalgic for it? Let's go back to the year 2021, to my original version of my Elder Scrolls Arena review. I'm nostalgic for the Star Wars prequels. They are not good movies if I am honest. Don't listen to him. Don't listen to that asshole quoting the Unlucky Tug. Even though I am a Gen Z, I am going to analyze this without the nostalgia goggles and go through all of the flaws and all of this movie's strengths. If you are someone who thinks that Phantom Menace is the worst movie of the franchise and worse than Rise of Skywalker, then I recommend you shut this video off and give it a dislike if you don't want to be reminded that you are fucking old and out of touch. Phantom Menace is obviously the worst Star Wars movie for sure. Even though I am going to be fair with Phantom Menace, I really enjoy Red Letter Media's Mr. Plinkett review on Phantom Menace, even if I don't agree with the opinion. With the Star Wars fandom, it seems like there are like 4 political parties in the fandom, just like what Motion Picture Aeronaut brought up in his videos on the Star Wars films, which aren't up anymore. There's the Gen Z chicks who only saw The Mandalorian and their favorite character is Grogu. There's the anti-woke Star Wars fans who hate the idea of anyone with skin a shade of brown to be in Star Wars when they already existed in Star Wars. There's Gen Zs who thinks the prequels are masterpieces and shit on the sequel trilogy. And the Gen X's and Millennials, like the folks at Red Letter Media, who hate the prequels and want every Star Wars movie to be a remake of A New Hope and Empire Strikes Back. Phantom Menace was the first Star Wars movie that I watched when I was 10, and that is what got me into Star Wars as a whole. Before that, I played with Star Wars Legos my older brother had when I did not know fucking anything about Star Wars, and I also saw a bit of Clone Wars at my cousin's house before seeing Phantom Menace when I was 8. So, Phantom Menace was the first Star Wars movie that I got into, and was my second favorite Star Wars movie behind Return of the Jedi before Force Awakens came out, and my opinion has changed over the years. Even though I have seen this movie a million times, I am going to watch this movie again to see if my opinion has changed after rewatching this film. Just like with any Star Wars movie, this film starts with an opening crawl. And why am I bringing that up? Well, people who shit on this movie say that the first red flag was the opening crawl bringing up about Trade Federation and politics and shit. Haters of Phantom Menace bitched about the politics in this film and is like, ew, political negotiations and meetings, they're so boring. Bro, there was a line in A New Hope about the Senate being dissolved and mentions of the Emperor and the last remnants of the Old Republic being destroyed. So, Star Wars had always had political elements. We will get to the fucking politics later, but the first 5 minutes after the opening crawl is one of the best opening sequences in all of Star Wars. Let me tell you why. The opening scene shows you immediately that this is a new time period in the Star Wars galaxy. There ain't any Super Star Destroyers, X-Wings, TIE Fighters, none of that shit from the original trilogy. There's a red spaceship and the Death half-eaten donut. The opening just throws you in this universe, still in the galaxy from the original 3 films you love, but in a different time period. It doesn't tell or show you, it throws you in. There aren't any stormtroopers because they didn't exist yet, but Instead, battle droids. What a good intro to a movie has is build up. There are 2 Jedi on duty, showing us that this was before the rise of the Empire, and before the fall of the Jedi. Palpatine, who we don't know is Palpatine yet, orders the 2 Jedi to be gassed. That line stood out to me.
I will make it legal.
Palpatine is one of my favorite Star Wars characters and my favorite Star Wars villain and one of the best movie villains, period. I love that this line alone gives a clue that Palpatine is pretty much that old man in that Pixar short playing chess by himself. I find it interesting that Star Wars fans call Palpatine 2 different names. Older Star Wars fans who had grown up with the originals call him the Emperor, and younger Star Wars fans who had grown up with the prequels and Clone Wars call him Palpatine. Kind of like Dr. Eggman / Dr. Robotnik.
What's amazing about Palpatine in the prequels is that if you are a casual viewer and not a die-hard movie enthusiast, you will not know that Palpatine is this guy, the big bad of Star Wars. If you are a die-hard Star Wars fan, you already knew Ian McDiarmid played the Emperor and Palpatine is evil. But if you are a casual viewer who doesn't know anything about actors, the reveal of Palpatine being the Sith Lord in Revenge of the Sith would be more of a shocker. Mind-blowing writing. My head's going to explode! The 2 Jedi, Obi-Wan Kenobi and Qui-gon Jinn, survive the gas, and then slices the battle droids. Sure, there is no suspense where you fear the 2 Jedi's lives, but the build-up worked, and it's awesome. Like I said, this scene gives the sense that this is a different time period where the Jedi were at their prime. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan escape down the vent and they discover that the Trade Federation is preparing to invade Naboo. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan boarded one of the Trade Federation ships and landed on Naboo, and then we meet Jar Jar Binks, the most annoying comic relief character in all of cinema.
Okay, here is an opinion people are not going to like. Jar Jar Binks is annoying, but he is not that bad. Like, Rage Quit the movie bad.
Maybe I saw this movie a million times as a kid, so I am used to him, but Jar Jar Binks doesn't add anything to the plot of this movie at all. I totally get that Star Wars is a 4-quadrant franchise because Star Wars always had childish kiddie elements. A New Hope had the Jawas, Empire Strikes Back had Yoda, and Return of the Jedi had the Ewoks. Star Wars had always had childish bits that were childish and were more appealing to kids. Jar Jar is just annoying because his humor is too juvenile for Star Wars. I wouldn't mind Jar Jar if Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan left Jar Jar in the underwater city and we never see him again after this, but nope, because we got to entertain the 2-year-old audience. This movie already has characters that kids would like and is kid appealing, like young Anakin, because he is at the same age as the kids that watch this movie, and Boss Nass, because he is a big fat goofball who does this. This movie already has 2 characters that kids can appeal to already, so why have Jar Jar Binks in this?
I don't get why people had a problem with Boss Nass with the like, he only did that shit twice in the movie, and he is just one minor side character. How can a movie be a 1 out of 10 because of one minor side character?
If Jar Jar had to be in the rest of the movie, then change his character and make him a Legolas-type badass, and his rabbit ears represent his Legolas hair. Have Jar Jar be banished not because he was clumsy and annoying, but have him banished because he disobeyed orders, and Qui-Gon takes Jar Jar along for being independent-minded like himself, because Qui-Gon sees himself in Jar Jar. Yeah, some fan-fiction-y cringe. I got that idea from this Gungan warrior later in the film. The underwater city and chase really shows the film's CGI, and one thing great about Phantom Menace is the CGI in this movie is quite photorealistic and good for the time, and even looks better than in more recent movies. This was 1999 CGI, and this underwater city and pod race later in the film looks good, and even the CGI on the different aliens and even Jar Jar looks good and still holds up today. Phantom Menace was the first live-action movie to have a motion-captured character, and it inspired Peter Jackson's Lord of the Rings trilogy, which is considered to be one of the best movie trilogies of all time. Jar Jar Binks walked, so Gollum in Lord of the Rings would run. The CGI in Phantom Menace still has shown its age because the shots of the tanks on Naboo looks like a Windows XP background, and some green screen have shown their age as well, but comparing to other movies in the 90s like Spawn and Mortal Kombat, none of the CGI in Phantom Menace is like, this shit's unacceptable. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan rescue the Queen and some hostages, and they escape on a ship. Then, the hyperdrive gets damaged, and all the droids are destroyed, except R2-D2.
One of the complaints from the prequels, which I get, is that George Lucas forced in characters from the original trilogy, like R2-D2, Chewbacca, and C-3PO, which I totally get. It was a nice little bit of nostalgia bait if you saw the original trilogy before this movie came out. But did R2 need to be in any of the prequels? Probably not.
The ship's hyperdrive is badly damaged, so the crew and hostages had to land on Tatooine with Qui-Gon, Padme, and Jar Jar leaving the ship.
Some people who criticized this scene asked the question, why did Padme, the Queen of Naboo, leave the ship and put herself in a town on Tatooine where she would be an easy target? I don't see a plot hole there, and here is why.
It makes sense for Padme to leave the ship because she is a politician and is one of the better written strong female characters. Padme chooses to leave the ship pretending to be the Queen's handmaiden, so she will get to know and understand the people she meets from other planets. Padme does worry for her people that she represents on Naboo, but she also cares about people not on Naboo. What makes Padme a good strong female character is that she is not an unlikable girl boss character that puts anyone down and is a complete bitch. She is kind and treats everyone with respect, but she is stern and questions Qui-Gon's decisions. She tries to understand others, cares deeply about her people on Naboo, but not just people on Naboo, but people from other planets that can't vote for her, and she is willing to put herself in the battlefield and in dangerous places to help others. Obi-Wan stays on the ship, and people might question that, but my headcanon is Obi-Wan stayed on the ship to guard it. 2 plot holes filled. Jar Jar then shoplifts by eating a Tatooine frog without paying for it, and spits it out in a horse head with legs and arms soup. As the horse head was about to beat up Jar Jar, a little kid rescues him.
God damn it, kid, let Jar Jar get his ass beat and his head on a stake.
Oh boy, let's talk about young Anakin. For child actors, he could have been worse, and I don't think he is as bad as others say. The actor Jake Lloyd had quit acting after Phantom Menace because of the harassment and bullying for being young Anakin in this movie. The story of Jake Lloyd is the biggest child star tragedy ever. Jake Lloyd was only 10 years old and did everything the adults in the room told him to do. Jake Lloyd absolutely did not deserve the bullying that he got from Phantom Menace, to the point of mental illness.
Just to be serious, if you don't like a child actor in a movie or anything, don't harass the child who did everything the adults told the child to do. I got a life, and you should too.
Going back to Jake Lloyd not being that bad, he still had one good line, and good bits of acting, like this line here.
Mom, you say the biggest problem in this universe is nobody helps each other.
And number 2, young Anakin acts like a kid would normally act his age. When Anakin met Padme for the first time, it was an innocent pre-puberty crush, and not that yet.
Are you an angel?
Are you an angel? I'm just cracking up my own Jake Lloyd impression. Oh my god.
I like that it is shown in this movie that Anakin as a child liked to build things and built C-3PO and a whole pod racer, like a kid who built a gaming PC. If I met a kid like that in real life, then I would be like, damn kid, you have talent, and I would wish to have it be my son. Qui-Gon Jinn discovers that Anakin has a high midichlorian count, which people complained about because it demystifies the Force, I guess. Which midichlorians are microscopic organisms that live inside all living creatures. The whole purpose of midichlorians is to explain why people are stronger in the Force than others, and number 2, midichlorians and the Force are two separate things. This scene shows how powerful Anakin is to the Force, and explains that Anakin didn't have a biological dad, but instead was born through the Force. This is an example of George Lucas using religion as inspiration for his movies. Anakin's mother, Shmi Skywalker, is the Virgin Mary of the Star Wars universe. The second act of the movie is my favorite chunk of the movie by far, in my opinion, and is what makes Qui-Gon the most underrated Star Wars character. I've seen videos about how to fix Phantom Menace, and people always suggest getting rid of Qui-Gon or have Obi-Wan want to bring Anakin to the Jedi Order, and have Qui-Gon not wanting to. I disagree. Qui-Gon is a tradition and rule breaker like Anakin, and is the father figure Anakin needed, and Obi-Wan was the brother figure. That was told with this line in Revenge of the Sith.
You were my brother, Anakin! I loved you!
Obi-Wan is more of a rule follower, and always follows the Jedi tradition mostly, but Qui-Gon is focused more on doing things from the will of the Force and what is right, which is why Qui-Gon refuses to join the Jedi Council and remain a knight. If Qui-Gon wasn't killed by Darth Maul at the end of this movie, then he would have trained and mentored Anakin, and Palpatine wouldn't have been able to manipulate Anakin, and Anakin would never turn to the dark side. That's why Duel of the Fates was called the Duel of the Fates. The first step of turning Anakin to the dark side was to kill Qui-Gon Jinn, kill the father figure Anakin needed. Obi-Wan wasn't a bad mentor, and Anakin loved Obi-Wan as a brother, and I still love their dynamic in the movies and Clone Wars, but Obi-Wan was just not the father figure Anakin needed. He was the brother figure. One deleted scene I wish wasn't removed was the scene where Anakin beats up young Greedo for thinking that Anakin cheated the pod race, and then Qui-Gon giving Anakin wisdom with the line, "You know the truth, but you have to tolerate the opinion. Fighting will not change it." I wish this line was in this movie. And also it shows Anakin's darker side from a younger age.
George Lucas could not have picked a better actor for a character like Qui-Gon. He is Liam Neeson, so of course he is so good at this.
Qui-Gon Jinn is the definition of rule breaking can be a good thing if it is done to do good and what's best. That's why Qui-Gon is one of my favorite Star Wars characters. Anakin and his mother are slaves, and are owned by the store owner Watto, who sells a hyperdrive for the ship, but he doesn't take Republic credits, so the only way to get the money is to win the pod race. Qui-Gon also makes a deal with Watto that if Anakin wins the pod race, Watto will free Anakin, but refuses to free both Anakin and his mother.
If anyone is not paying attention to this movie at this point, people may see a plot hole there, because someone would think, why can't Qui-Gon leave with both Anakin and Shmi and the hyperdrive?
It is explained by Anakin that slaves have detonators, and if they try to escape, their heads get blown up. This is an example of tell not show, but this is a kids movie, so George Lucas couldn't get away with showing that in a kids movie. Now we get to the pod race, and the pod race is my favorite part of the movie. It's a great piece of world building. The original trilogy showed people with average jobs, like bartenders and musicians, in the cantina scene in A New Hope, for example. But the prequels have more people and aliens with average jobs and interests in the Star Wars universe. Being a part of a rebellion or an empire is not the only thing to be a part of. The pod race scene shows a part of the universe by showing its sports and entertainment, like Quidditch from Harry Potter. Not only is the pod race scene a fantastic bit of world building, but the CGI and effects has aged so well in the scene, and this scene has me at the edge of my seat even if I have seen this movie a gillion times. First of all, you hate Anakin's racing rival, Cibola, because he literally crashes and kills the other pod racers. So you fear for Anakin's life, and you have a reason to hate this prick, and want Anakin to beat his ass. Number 2, he was set up earlier in the film.
This is an example of a screenwriting technique called build up and payoff. If you are viewing this movie as someone who knows a little bit about screenwriting, you should not see this movie as brainless. And George Lucas somewhat knew what he was doing when writing this movie.
The first thing Cibola does to try to cheat is messing with Anakin's pod racer, which makes Anakin not start at first, which makes you absolutely hate Cibola. The pod race scene is not just a cool action scene to add to the film's runtime. It shows Anakin's reflexes and force sensibilities and talent working with machinery. This scene is also one of Jake Lloyd's good acting bits because he does not speak or react to any situation out loud. You see his reactions to certain things with Jake Lloyd's facial acting, and that's all that was needed. For the chocolate syrup on the sundae, John Williams' score for this scene is just awesome, and for the cherry on top, Cibola crashes and gets stuck in the middle of the desert. That is so satisfying.
Yeah, your mother! Woo!
Anakin wins the pod race and wins the money for the hyperdrive and is free from slavery, but not his mother. So he says goodbye and then heads to the ship, but Darth Maul attacks and Qui-Gon Jinn duels Darth Maul. The duel is a bit of an appetizer before Duel of the Fates. Qui-Gon escapes and introduces Anakin to Obi-Wan Kenobi. One scene I like in this movie is Padme comforting Anakin when feeling scared and cold, while herself also feels down and worried about her people on Naboo. This scene adds more emotion to a later movie, Revenge of the Sith, because Anakin gives Padme a necklace, and that same necklace was shown at Padme's funeral, which makes this shot in that movie hurt more. The ship lands on Coruscant, and god damn it, this place is beautiful, and I want to live here, not knowing this place gets fucking destroyed in the Expanded Universe Legends timeline by the Yozong Vong. I love the new planets they introduced in this movie. With the original trilogy, the planets in Star Wars aren't that creative, except for Bespin from Empire Strikes Back, because all there is with planets is an Arctic, but the entire planet, a desert, but the entire planet, a forest, but the entire planet. With the prequels, the new planets introduced feel more alive and real, like Naboo. There are underwater parts on Naboo with different sea creatures and multiple different cultures and civilizations on Naboo. There are the Gungans and humans that live on Naboo who live in different climates and have different cultures. Some Senate meetings that a lot of people bitched about, but People also complained that the story is too confusing and doesn't make sense, which I don't get. Even as a kid, I understood the plot of the movie. Also, people say a reason this movie is bad is because it doesn't have a main character. This movie does have a main character, Qui-gon Jinn, and the only reason people say he is not the main character was because he died at the end, but there are tons of movies where the main character dies at the end, like Logan. Love that movie. Also, have you heard of an ensemble cast? Tons of movies have it, like The Avengers, The Lord of the Rings, Pulp Fiction. Star Wars is one of those movies. The story is not confusing at all. Let me summarize the plot. An evil space corporation is invading the peaceful planet of Naboo, and 2 Jedi Knights are trying to stop it, and they meet a Force-sensitive child on the way. That's the plot of the movie. It was easy for me to understand as a kid, so I don't get why grown-ass adults complain about the plot being confusing. Sure, there is political shit in this movie, with Queen Amidala being held hostage to sign a treaty, but it's only a small element of the film. Maybe it's just me oversimplifying the plot, but if I could understand the plot as a kid, then I find it hilarious that grown adults couldn't. Anakin has a meeting with the Jedi Council and does a Force test. Yoda and Mace Windu doesn't trust Anakin, and Mace Windu, played by Samuel L. Jackson, is like, "You're too old," because in Star Wars canon, the old Jedi Order mainly takes children from birth, which makes Anakin too old.
People also criticize this scene and are like, why are all the Jedi's dicks in this scene? Well, aren't the Jedi in the prequel trilogy supposed to be flawed?
Think about it. The Jedi are supposed to be flawed because it's a contributing factor why Anakin turns to the dark side, what destroyed the Jedi Order, the fall of the Republic, and the rise of the Empire. Qui-Gon knows the Jedi Order is really flawed, which is why he refuses to join the Jedi Council. The Jedi reject Anakin, and even Obi-Wan is skeptical about having Anakin join the Jedi Order. Padme, Anakin, and the 2 Jedi Knights go to Naboo, and Padme reveals to be Queen Amidala, and the woman dressed as the Queen was a decoy. Boss Nass from earlier in the film agrees to help fight the Trade Federation's battle droid army. The third act of the movie is okay, not the best in my opinion. The best part of the third act is what everyone else agrees is the best part, which is Obi-Wan and Qui-Gon versus Darth Maul. You all know why this scene is great. Duel of the Fates is one of John Williams' iconic scores, and the lightsaber choreography is great. This scene is the reason why, as a kid, Phantom Menace was my second favorite Star Wars film behind Return of the Jedi. Anakin hides in the Naboo starfighter that Qui-Gon tells to stay inside, but flies away to join the space battle, and somehow Anakin finds a child-sized helmet. The child-sized helmet is probably for an alien pilot or something.
That's what I always do when I watch movies. Whenever there is a plot hole or anything that doesn't make sense, I always try to make a headcanon to fill it with.
The other parts of the final battle, like Padme pew-pew-pewing droids and Jar Jar Binks hijinks, which I don't know why Boss Nass decided to grant him as general, but whatever. Those 2 parts of the third act aren't interesting. What's most important is the lightsaber duel and Anakin up in space. What the scenes with Jar Jar Binks in the battlefield add is humor that is only funny if you are like 2, and that's it. Anakin destroys the Trade Federation ship, which he flew inside by dumb luck. Then all the droids are powered off and the Battle of Naboo is won. The third act is not my favorite part of the film, but what I like about it is that it feels natural in a way. When Darth Maul kills Qui-Gon Jinn and Obi-Wan slices him in half, that didn't happen in the middle of the third act. It happens at the very end, like one more problem to deal with. It feels a bit more natural that way, rather than having Obi-Wan kill Darth Maul in the middle. Not really. Yeah, it was considered a mistake killing Darth Maul, so he was resurrected in the expanded universe and Clone Wars. Qui-Gon Jinn makes a dying wish for Obi-Wan to train Anakin as his Padawan, and Obi-Wan agrees, but Yoda doesn't agree. With a line of dialogue, the Jedi Council agrees to train Anakin, probably for being the chosen one and for blowing up a space donut.
I don't think people would have had a problem with this scene if there was an extra scene where the council votes for Anakin to be trained in the Jedi Order, instead of just Yoda saying, "Agree with you, the council does. Smoke weed every day, I must." But I get that's not in the movie because flow and time.
I do enjoy Qui-Gon's funeral scene though. Fantastic piece of John Williams music in this, and love the dialogue between Yoda and Mace Windu. Yoda talks about an ancient Sith code of the Rule of Two, which teases that there could be another Sith out there, and it opens the door for expanded universe novels, which fans consider the best. It also makes sense with Yoda being 900 years old and all. Yoda mentioning the Rule of Two is not what's important in this scene. It's Obi-Wan giving the news to Anakin that he'll be training him, and after the funeral, celebration like in A New Hope, where Boss Nass raises up an orb thing. Don't know what that is. For any Star Wars lore experts, please tell me what that is, and that's the end.
So, is Phantom Menace a good movie, and do I like it? Yes, I do. It is not a masterpiece of a film, and during my cringe teenage years I am somewhat nostalgic for, I kind of hated this movie and was too old for it.
There are a lot of good things in Phantom Menace. I like Qui-Gon Jinn. I like that Padme is a strong female character that is not an unlikable girl boss like from other shows and movies. Out of all of the Star Wars movies, this movie has the best world building out of all the movies, and opens doors for expanded universe content, like the Darth Bane novels and Knights of the Old Republic. Sure, this film is derivative of A New Hope, like Force Awakens was, but what makes Phantom Menace better was the feel that this film is set in a different time period in the galaxy, while adding to the universe and being a part of the tragic fall of Anakin Skywalker. As a kid before my teenage years, this was the one I liked out of the three prequels, and even if I was a dumb kid back then, I don't blame myself. Out of the three prequels, this is the most straightforward and the one closest out of all the three prequels to the originals.
Sure, George Lucas went too far with Jar Jar, and the third act could have been better, but I still enjoy Phantom Menace.
I gave this film 3 stars on Letterboxd, which is okay leaning to good, because there are two types of okay. Okay leaning to bad, which is a 5 out of 10, which is 2.5 stars, and 3 stars, which equals 6 out of 10, which is okay leaning towards good.
Star Wars Episode 1 The Phantom Menace does not suck, and is one of those movies I would put on after having a shitty day, and this movie would give me comfort. This is definitely not the worst Star Wars movie. Those are, because yes, we will get to those eventually. Won't that be fun? Oh, fuck me, what am I doing with my life?